Thank you, Callum. Evan and O'Toole here.
Yep, Rutal.
Excellent. Strangelove.
I'm here.
Thank you, Alex. The IBC team.
I'm here.
Thank you, Susanna.
It's Susanna. Yeah.
Binary builders. Do we have anyone from binary builders here? I don't see Marco. I guess not. Okay. Informal. I also don't see anyone from informal. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe they'll join a bit later. Okay, and then on the DA side, from Celestia Labs, Celestia Node team.
Hi.
Hello, Renee.
Nicholas is here.
Hello as well. Okay, and then from the Eiger team.
I'm doing Eiger.
Hello, hello. Okay, I think that's it for the roll call. Wait, should I be sharing my screen? I guess I should.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I need to restart Zoom to do that.
Okay, I should be able to do it here. Can you guys see my window
Perfect.
on the Celestia Core Devs call agenda?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll take
I
that as
think,
yes. Excellent.
would it be good to zoom in a little bit or increase
Good
the
point.
font size? Nice.
Yeah,
Thank you.
here we're zooming in. There we go. Okay, let's start with working group updates and then talk about CIPs. So any updates from the DA working group?
No updates.
No updates. Okay. Any updates from the interface working group? I don't see Josh from Astria. And I think Ismail is Ooh. Is there anyone else from the interface working group who can represent?
I can share. Yeah, Ismail wrote up the initial draft of the CIP for the canonical API. So I know he's out last week and this week. So probably next week, I would imagine he'll sort of give everyone a nudge to look at that and review it. So some progress has been made, but there hasn't been a meeting.
Excellent. Then we'll discuss that. We can discuss the CIP in the next Core Devs call. Do you know if it's one of these CIPs?
It's still in a
It is
draft
not.
right now.
It is not. Okay. Then
Yeah,
we can see about discussing it in the next Core Devs call. But in the meantime, anyone who's interested in making use of the canonical Celestia API, please take a look at that draft. Should be this one here, canonical API, PR number 167. And please provide feedback. Okay, lastly, updates from the ZK working group. Do we have Nash or Zaki here?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So sorry for the background noise. I'm in the airport right now, but the update is that we're talking more to Sovereign SDK and realize that Snark generation isn't incentivized because of KVMs not supporting recursive Snark verification, or like it's still not accelerated. So the discussion of the proof system came up again, and that is the most the thing that's been looked at recently.
Thank you. Okay, let's yes, and there's a lot of exciting work going on in the ZK working group. If you're interested in that, please reach out to Nash Girazaki or myself. This bi-weekly call is going on for this. This is all working groups. Okay, let's now go over updates on active CIPs, starting with CIP 17, I believe. Yep, let's go CIP 17, the lemongrass hard fork. Rutul.
This. So SIP 17 is already final, but this is just going to be a bunch of updates on like getting that to mainnet. So basically, since the last call, we tested a little bit of Celestia v2.0, a little bit more. We cut a few more release candidates, and now we're basically ready to cut the final release of v2.0.0. So expect that by the end of this week. Shortly after that gets released, we're going to try to incorporate that in Celestia Node. So hopefully this v2 release gets included in Celestia Node, hypothetically vo.16.0, but TBD. And then once Celestia Node supports Celestia App v2, we'll roll this out to Arabica, hopefully in early August. Just two other call outs. One is last call, we talked about Conduit potentially like testing Celestia App v2 on an ephemeral testnet. They weren't able to do that yet. So we're kind of like waiting for them to do that. But at this point, we might end up just getting it deployed on Arabica and testing there. So that leads into the second point, which is if you run a service like a rollup or an index or anything on top of Celestia, please deploy your service to Arabica and Mocha so that you can get signal on whether your service continues to work after the Lemongrass hard fork is activated on those testnets. So that should be coming pretty soon. So like if you haven't deployed already and you're not making use of those testnets, please do. Because that'll help us prevent any service downtime on mainnet. So yeah, those are all the updates I thought of.
Mm-hmm. Or specifically deployed either after those testnets have respectively upgraded, or deployed before and then monitor after, versus just deploying it now and then not monitoring after the upgrade.
Yeah.
And then for upgrades, I believe the upgrades to the testnets and mainnet eventually will be announced in the Celestia community Telegram channel. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Definitely on Telegram, hopefully also on Discord. So if you can follow those communication channels, that'd be great.
Excellent. Thank you.
I want to jump in and add just the pipeline for upgrading is going to be from Arabica, then to Mocha, then to mainnet. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
With at least a couple of weeks in between each. So this isn't something that's going to be in mainnet tomorrow. Looking at, if Arabica is early August, Mocha is mid-August, then we're looking at late August for mainnet, assuming no bugs. Which, given the excellent work of all the engineers involved in this, let's cross our fingers and hope there's no bugs. Okay. Next CIP is CIP 21. Introduce blob with verified signers or authored blobs. Is that the same thing? Callum, are you here? Please take it away.
Yes. So I just finished cutting the first release candidate of the V2 of Go Square, which is where most of this like actual protocol work is in place, and now started integrating it with Celestia app. So hopefully this will be done within a week or two, and then we'll start testing in QA. It is likely that this will also go through audits. So that's the current status update.
Thank you. Was there a call to revisit CIP 21? Okay, 21 and 23. This is currently in review. Do we want to move it to final? Is it time for that yet?
Well, I think this last call is in between, right?
Oh, my bad. Last call, yes.
I'm not opposed to moving it to last call. The only thing that would cause us to rethink it is if in QA or in testing there was some sort of major flaw or something that we had to change, and then we probably have to readdress it. But at the moment, everything seems in order.
Okay. How about we wait for that preliminary QA at least as a sanity check, and then if there's no red flags, then we can move it to last call. Any objections to that?
Sounds good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Callum. The next CIP is CIP 22, move to review. So this is removing the index wrapper. I don't know if you're available, Nash, to discuss this, or if you're still running through the report.
I'm definitely listening, and if there are any questions, I could answer them right now.
Oh, do you want to give a summary of the index? Do you want to give a summary of CIP 22 and its current status?
Yeah, so I moved it to review status and updated it with the updated specification, all the feedback that I got from the last community call, and I'm still in favor of removing the index wrapper. Yeah, that would be the update.
Excellent. Are there any objections to removing the index wrapper? I feel like this proposal.
Well, first of all, have we checked that this doesn't break anyone's use case? Is anyone relying on the index wrapper?
Backwards compatibility. It's consensus breaking, but shouldn't affect anybody upstream, except potentially sovereign.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, if they're gonna end up using authored blobs, then it's also not going to affect sovereign, because they're not gonna be looking into the PFP namespace anymore. And Celestia node doesn't consume the index, and nobody else really does as well.
But in terms of like why we moving this in the first place, simplify square layout creation. Like I'm not sure that also seems to have backwards, like changing the square layout also seems to have. I'm not sure we can change that without breaking backwards compatibility as well. So like,
yeah, it'd be a breaking change and like a hard fork to have this out.
To realize the benefits of this CIP, don't we also need to change the actual square layout version? Like, what are the benefits of the CIP in isolation without future CIPs?
What do you mean by the square layout?
Okay, first, okay, let's John. Okay, go ahead.
Oh no, I guess my question was, what do you mean by the square layout? Because there's things like the logic to create the square layout, and there's like various constraints on the square layout in general, regardless of the logic to create it from transactions. At least in the CIP description here, it looks like, assuming someone didn't like assume the square layout in all cases with all constraints exactly as it is, which they shouldn't have. It looks like this doesn't completely change the square layout. It just changes like one thing. But correct me if I'm wrong.
What's the benefit of the CIP in isolation?
In isolation, it makes the PFB transaction deterministic. So currently, you would ingest the index into the PFB wrapper after the blob has been inside the square. But now you can have a deterministic PFB transaction, and the square construction is much simpler. So it would delete a bunch of code, at least in app and core, that just does the malleation and the wrapping. And this is in isolation, right? That would happen right now. In the future, this also enables things like fast block slow squares as a prerequisite, in the sense that you need to have the PFB to be deterministic because of the deterministic square construction out of the blocks. So the bytes, the PFB bytes stay the same and don't change. Otherwise, you would have to prove equivalence of the data root of blocks to the actual bytes that are in the square.
In terms of backwards incompatibility, you're saying the change to sovereign SDK parsing logic. Is that how big of a change is that?
Are we assuming that even sovereign SDK is not consuming the index inside the circuit? They just would have to. It would make the circuit simpler because they need to do less proto malleation. But if they're going to end up using authored blobs, then they're not going to end up looking into the PFB transaction namespace anyway.
Yeah, but assuming they don't, like you're saying, because they don't use information anyway, so I assume it should be a fairly simple change, just like it.
If they don't use it, then it sounds like it's just removing the parsing of a single field.
Yeah, like if we remove the whole index wrapper, you need to basically simplify the circuit to not parse through the index wrapper. So it makes the circuit simpler, but you have to change it.
I see.
Evan, since your hand up.
Yeah, I think that this has, in the ideal case, we would sort of explore this more as to what this means for the rest of like the square layout. Just because like if we remove this, there is no way to do fraud proofs for blob inclusion and PFP inclusion. Therefore, that changes so much. Like that changes padding, that changes the non-interactive defaults, or the way that we calculate the commitment in the PFB. Like none of that means anything. It's not. Like there's no reason for it if you get rid of this index.
So part of okay, everything you said is correct. Just because you're correct doesn't mean you're right. So I think it's correct that some things, like for instance, you say you can't do like full fraud proofs of blob inclusion. Sure, that's correct. However, you know, the plan is to move towards ZK like validity proof of, well, not just blob inclusion, but the whole square construction. Now, you know, whether or not this makes things like the default layout, which is like the non-interactive defaults, which I guess aren't defaults anymore. That's the rule, along with the blob commitment. To a certain extent, that's also correct. But my understanding is that as we move towards a world with, you know, validity proofs of square construction, which given the stateless nature of this, should be quite feasible. The blob commitment itself can be made simpler. You know, it's currently this weird like Merkle tree, like Merkle mountain range over like subtree roots and that kind of stuff in order to support some compact proofs. But you can have a simpler commitment scheme if we move to entirely ZK world. So that's true, but I also don't think that this requires changing any of those things today.
No,
like,
yeah.
You're correct that they might serve no purpose anymore if we're moving towards ZK land, and they would get changed towards, you know, if we go in that direction. But that doesn't mean they need to be changed today. Like, they would still work.
Yeah,
even
that
if
makes sense
they
to
don't
me.
serve the entirety of their original purpose.
I think all I'm advocating for here, I guess, is that we measure twice and cut once. So we at least explore what this new ZK square layout would look like, and compare that with what it would look like with fast block slow squares. So then we have a better idea of where we're going, instead of just like the worst case scenario, in my opinion here, which isn't that bad, would be removing it and then adding it back in for some reason.
I agree, yes. Although my understanding is we don't actually need to implement, like, other than the fact that some of these, such as this, you know, removing a field may lead to some slightly more compact transactions, like one field, which isn't significant. I don't think these need to be implemented until or deployed rather, in a hard fork until we get closer to, you know, closer to that end goal of ZKing everything. Of course, it doesn't hurt, assuming that we have a path to get to that. It doesn't hurt because some of these things are actual optimizations. They remove things, make things simpler, etc., that aren't needed. But you're right that having a path to get there would avoid us having to put this back in, which would be really not great. This or other things. Thank you, Evan. Okay, but I don't hear any fundamental objections to this, so that's good. Now, next is reviewing CIP 23 and status. I believe CIP 22 was moved to review.
Has her hand raised? I don't know if that was for the
is there
last
hand raised?
discussion.
Oh, Sanaz, please go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question about this removal of index wrapper. How would that impact the way that a transaction author can actually locate the blobs for a PFP transaction? Would it actually incur additional computational cost when you query for a transaction, like the blobs within the PFP in the square? Because like previously we had the indices, but right now you're removing it. I just want to know, how does that look like?
So could you repeat, like, concise the question in?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm with this change, if I'm have submitted a PFP and later I want to query like where the blobs are included in this square. And how would that change basically, or does it stay unchanged with this removal of the index wrapper?
Okay, so do you mean querying on the Core app side or querying on the node side?
No, on the Core app side.
How is it currently? How does it currently work?
No, with this change, after this change, would that be impacted the way that someone can query where the blobs of a PFP is located in the square? So like basically when you query that, does the query has to do additional work to locate the blobs of a PFP in the square?
I don't know. I'll actually have to look into it. I don't know how. I know that Celestia node side creates their own index for blob queries and is not like dependent on this one. But I'm not sure how Core app does blob querying, so I don't know how it actually gets impact. I have no idea. Would have to look into it.
I don't think it's expected for users to query Celestia app for blobs. That's what we have Celestia node for. And with that, you can query by blob commitment. So long as you have the blob commitment for the blob you submitted, you should be able to see if it's included. Does that answer your question, Sanaz?
So it means that you don't have to know the exact basically index of the blobs in the square in order to query. So it doesn't impact the user interaction. Okay.
I honestly didn't know that we can even query blobs through Core app. I thought it was only happening through Node. Like I think we can do whole namespaces, but can we actually query single blobs through Core app? Like, is that a feature that we have?
I don't think you can.
No,
I don't think so.
Okay, sorry, my bad then. But I mean, I was just wondering about the query process. How would that be impacted?
If we had that feature, then it would be impacted, I think, because there needs to be some mapping, and that mapping can be derived from the index. But that mapping exists on the Celestia node part, which they generate for themselves and are not deriving it from the PFB, but through internal logic.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we would have to, at the moment, the blob stream, if you generate share proofs from core, it does use that index, the index wrapper on the PFP, but we're removing that anyway.
Excellent. And also as noted in the chat here, that the index which is being removed is currently on chain, but it also doesn't need to be on chain. It can just be off chain, like some indexer can index it off chain, stuff like that. Okay. Thank you for the question. That was good to know. Last is CIP 23, which is currently in draft. This is the coordinated prevote time. Callum, did you want to discuss this?
I can. The aim of this is to solve the problem where we see inconsistent block times. So when there is a large block or a large amount of data, it's usually a lot more delayed than if there is nothing. So if there's an empty block, and we kind of want to provide finality on a regular cadence. So this is a solution to that, suggested by Sanaz, in which instead of pre-voting immediately, we delay our pre-vote until the end of the timeout proposed. And then if we were to pre-vote for that block, that's when we do it. So that way everyone kind of pre-votes sort of at the same time. And at the same time, we reduce timeout commit, which is the time that we were previously waiting for. So something like 0 or 1 second. That way that sort of the time that we're waiting in between is sort of like including that of the block propagation.
Excellent. Did you discuss this in the previous core devs call, or this the first one?
No, I think it's the first one.
Okay, excellent. There were some additional, I don't know, certainly there were some additional variations on this, but this one was the final thing that was decided.
Yeah.
To go with, at least initially. Did you consult with, say, the Comet BFT team or any of the teams working on that on whether or not this would have any weird effects?
There was some discussion with them, and a lot of this has similar ideas to. So Comet BFT has ADR 115, which was to allow the application to control the timeout commit, and this takes an element of that in it as well. And as to like the delayed pre-voting part, we've been talking with Dave from Osmosis about it. So far, it looks good in theory. Of course, we'll have to prototype and see if it actually has the desired change. And I think the Informer will definitely be involved in auditing this. So either now or later on, they'll be involved.
Excellent. Is there an estimated ETA on having a prototype?
For a prototype?
Yes.
I can make an estimation. Whether that's correct or not is
that's some sort of estimation. Thing. I mean, is this like something that's going to be like a month from now or like 6 months from now?
No, it's like a week or two.
Awesome. Okay, then this is a pretty exciting. Oh, here's your ADR 115. Okay, yeah, this is pretty exciting to make more consistent block times. Does anyone have any fundamental objections to this? Okay, I don't hear any fundamental objections. Yeah, I discussed this with some of you guys offline, so I think this is perfectly fine as a direction. Let's see. Next is not a CIP, but discuss features for the Celestia state machine v3. And then I guess since I'm here on the agenda, there's also a new CIP website here created by Josh. Thank you, Josh. Kind of like the Ethereum EIP's website that kind of is a nice way of rendering and viewing all the CIPs that are currently active and proposed. Thank you, Josh. Now we can discuss v3 features for the Celestia state machine v3. Does Evan, okay, Evan unmuted himself. Please go ahead, Evan.
At the moment, we're just planning on, for sure, authored blobs and this delayed voting, assuming that assuming that there are no like further issues with either of those things. If we have time, we will also include a refactor to how we're upgrading. So this refactor makes it so that it's, I don't think we've written a ADR for this. Doesn't need a CIP because I don't think it's consensus breaking. It might actually be, but this refactor just allows us to have like a much more Cosmos SDK friendly upgrade system. So we can just use normal Cosmos SDK modules off the shelf and can upgrade while still having a rolling upgrade. So that's exciting. That's currently being prototyped. That will optionally be included, or that's the current thinking, not will. It is the current thinking is that it could be included along with those other two. There's so far, at least my current understanding is that social consensus is aiming for the other two. So I think that's CIP 21 and CIP 23.
Awesome. And my understanding. Sorry, go ahead.
We need to write up the meta CIP for those two, and I guess we can discuss that in the next call.
Yeah, it'd be good to get started on the meta CIP. Just might as well, and to also have like a concrete and asynchronous way of discussing what's included. Something that's easily discoverable for what's going to be included in this next hard fork of the state machine. And my understanding is that this is going to follow relatively quickly after the lemongrass hard fork. Is that correct?
Yeah, we hope that's the hope.
Let's hope and cross our fingers. Excellent. Okay, that brings us to the end of the agenda. Does anyone have anything else they wanted to discuss in the court of call? Okay, I don't see any hands up or any unmuting, so I guess that's it. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
John, for meeting.
Bye. Thank you.